Hey YouTube Trail fam, Ghost Mule here, and welcome back to my channel, Everyday Backpacker. Now, judging from the things I've been seeing on the YouTubes these days, it looks like a lot of people are out there getting into their early adventures for the season, especially out on the East Coast. Those of us out on the western part of the states are still in the process of planning our trips because our season doesn't typically start until June. And maybe even later, considering it's currently the middle of August and we currently under a blizzard warning. So since we're in the middle of doing some planning, I thought I would introduce you guys to a tool that we use out here to plan trips quite often that not a lot of people outside of the mountain zones are aware of, and that is the SNOTEL system. Now the SNOTEL system is a system that I was completely clueless about until I moved out here to Montana, which is one of the states that is involved in the system. Now SNOTEL is an automated system of snowpack and climate sensors that are operated by the Natural Resource Conservation Service under the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the western United States. It currently comprises over 730 sensor groupings in 11 states, including Alaska. So the SNOTEL system is easily accessed by putting in the word SNOTEL into Google, and the first thing it'll bring up will be the interactive map. And this shows all of the SNOTEL sites, and it brings up, there's lots of different things that you can generally click on to kind of look at the different data, but it gives you the opportunity to kind of zoom in to a certain area, and you get colored circles that represent the percentage of snowpack. So for instance, right now in the Beartooth, two sensors, they're showing about 86 percentile and 110%. Conversely, the Crazy Mountains right now are in dangerous conditions at 37% and 35%. Compare that to areas like High Sierras in the California, and most of them are well below 50%, in some cases down to even 0. Now if you want to go really down into the weeds, you can click on this and it'll show generally the comparison between all the different years of snowpacks, the maximum snowpack, and the current snowpack and how it progresses throughout. Now this information is important for us out here in the West because it provides us with certain information that's kind of important for us. One, much of the area of Montana and these other states rely on the snowpack for their water, and so that can tell us how much of a dry season we're going to have. That also coincides with wildfires. The less snowpack we have throughout the year, the more increased probability of wildfires there is. Last year, we were also down, generally in the 70 to 80% area for snowpack, and we had some pretty nasty wildfires. We'll talk more about that later. And then lastly, it also does help us be able to plan our outdoor recreation. Those of us that ski can look at that and see how much snow is going to be present when they go out for their ski trip and what areas may or may not be accessible. As far as hiking goes, it's a good indicator of how far in we're going to be able to get at what point in the season. Make rough estimates as to how long it's going to take the snow to melt. Obviously, a higher percentage of snowpack, the more time it's going to take for that snow to melt and us to be able to access those trails, especially for those who don't know about snow beyond a certain point in time in the year being an issue. They could look at this information and say, oh, I won't be able to go on that hike this early in the season. I've actually had a conversation with someone who wanted to do a mountain pass in early June, late May. It was still completely snow covered. I told them this, and they actually said to me, well, I don't understand how that's possible. We don't even have snow after March in Ohio. I can say this because I'm from Ohio. And so as you can see, it's a pretty important resource for us out here to be able to kind of get a glimpse at the conditions of the mountains in these remote areas that we may not have a direct line of sight assessment on yet. But the other part of this is really important and became very important last year is the area of wildfires. So the data from the SNOTEL information sites is showing a very clear gradual progression of lower and lower snowpacks throughout the year. Conversely, we see a ever increasing amount of wildfires throughout the year. Last year, we actually thought we were doing pretty good. Most of our SNOTELs were indicating at around 100% or so. But we still ended up having an extremely heavy fire season. Not only here, but in other parts of the country, including, obviously, the Sierras and the California region, which burned incredibly badly last year. Again, they were showing SNOTEL readings in the 30 percentile category. Locally last year, we did have a fire near the town of Red Lodge, which is right outside of the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. And this fire heavily affected us here with smoke. And then also later on in the season, because we went through a fire ban, we weren't allowed to have any open fires anywhere in the backcountry or the front country, which is pretty rare even for us. Now, that fire in Red Lodge was caused by somebody who was on a motorized dirt bike in an area that he wasn't supposed to be on a motorized dirt bike, and he attempted to do some engine maintenance, spilled some gasoline, ignited the fire, and that in turn burned quite a bit of Mount Maurice. Now, fortunately, that fire very early on doubled back on itself, and it kind of sputtered out. But it could have been a very devastating fire for that entire region had the wind not changed. And so that's going to bring me to the second part of this video, because although we're getting a lot closer to the percentages, we're still pretty low for our area. And so it's going to be important to decide whether we should consider not having fires in the backcountry and possibly even in the front country. Now, don't get me wrong. I love fires. I love fires when I go out and camping, especially at a car camping site. There's nothing better than sitting there around the fire, talking with friends, and enjoying the experience. That being said, when I go into the backcountry, I don't have fires. Mainly because I'm lazy, and I don't really feel like looking for firewood at the end of a long day of hiking. And I have found that it's quite easy to have a good time without a campfire. Now, you're probably thinking, man, everybody's always just trying to quelch my fun. I just want to have a campfire and have fun. Besides, I know what I'm doing. It's a conversation I've had with lots of my friends, and I totally understand that. And I get it. But this isn't just about people trying to not allow you to have fun. This is about people who are trying to preserve the forests so that they can continue to use it for generations. Because it only takes one mistake to burn an entire area, and that area is burned for generations. And so this is where the dreaded three-letter acronym comes into place, LNT, or Leave No Trace. Now, this is usually the part where a lot of people just channel out because they don't want to hear about the Leave No Trace Nazis and them telling them how to do. But hear me out for a minute. I know a lot of videos that talk about Leave No Trace really talk about how to do it. They don't really touch on the subject of why it's important. Let's take a look at our local area here, for instance. Just in the case of the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness, the rough estimate is there's between 100 and 200,000 visitors in the area. We're not even going to talk about the 4 million visitors of Yellowstone. So it may only be that you, as one individual backpacker, may leave behind 3 or 4 squares of toilet paper. No big deal, right? But even if you take a fraction of those annual estimated visitors and say 15,000 backpackers in the back area, if each one of those backpackers leaves a few pieces of trash, it's all going to add up very quickly. And this has some real world consequences to it. Not just the fact that it's kind of unsightly. I mean, nobody likes to be walking through the forest and find somebody's dirty poo paper lying on the ground. But it can eventually lead to things like loss of access to public lands. There's a really popular trail here in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness called the Beaten Path, or the Over the Top Paths, and it sees quite a few visitors throughout the year, and it currently is open to everyone. Now, last year, at the very beginning of the season, my friend and I decided to hike up to Elk Lake, which is at the tail end of this particular trail. And we were probably some of the first people up there that season because there was still snow all around. It was very early in the season, so it hadn't really been used that much yet. And we got there, and the most popular campsite in that area was available. So, of course, we took it because you almost never get it. And it's a great little campsite. But when we went off to hang our bear bag or to use the facilities to dig a cat hole, I was shocked, simply shocked at the amount of used toilet paper and used feminine hygiene products that we found throughout the entire area. In fact, we hung our bear bag and found a tampon right below our bear bag. Now, this particular trail, which is a beautiful trail, is being so heavily impacted by this kind of thing and by people not packing their stuff out, that it is under serious consideration for being a permitted trail in the near future, which means that many people who utilize that trail on a fairly regular basis are now going to have to compete in order to get back in there. And this is just a regular occurrence of too much use, in the sense loving something to death. So for me, that's the important reason why I like to use a leave no trace policies. Not to mess with somebody else's fun, but to make sure that other people get to experience that fun as well. And more importantly, with fires, which most of those fires that were started by somebody was probably preceded by them saying, don't worry, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing. It takes one ember, one mistake, one little issue, and now nobody gets to enjoy that forest the same way for many years. So in closing, I want you to go out there. I want you to have fun. I want you to experience these beautiful lands, but I also want you to be careful and take care of them for everyone. And hopefully, if you're going out to the west, SNOTEL will be an opportunity for you to make sure that you're making good decisions that will best impact that land. And now I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks again for coming to my TED Talk. What are some areas or tools that you use to plan that maybe people don't know about, that provide information that is beyond kind of those normal things that we think about? Leave those things in the comment below, and if I see one that I really like, I'll make a video on it. Thanks for coming in and joining me today, and as always, keep hiking on.